sport of the man whose motor racing career seemed to be over 2 years ago. Niki Lauda won the first of his 2 world titles in 1975, driving for Ferrari. Only Fangio, Jack Brabham and Jackie Stewart have won it more often. The following year, at the Nürburgring in the German Grand Prix, Lauda came so close to death, a priest administered the last rites over him. Burned and disfigured, Lauda willed himself to live. Such is the man's amazing courage that 6 weeks later he was back behind the wheel, racing again. Shortly after that accident, Lauda talked to me about his philosophy for survival.
When I came to the hospital, you know, you feel a kind of you feel like you are very tired, and you would like to go and sleep. But you know, it's not just going sleeping; it's something else. And then you just fight with the brain. You hear noises and you hear voices, and you just try to listen what they're saying, and you try to keep your brain working, and to get the body ready to fight against the illness. And I think this was very good that I did that, because in that way I survived. In life you need a certain amount of luck, but now the question is how much luck you need. I think the luck is the minimum part of it. I think it is. I think you can steer a lot your life, you know what I mean? You have the wheel. I think human beings can do much more for themselves than they think.
That same year, 1976, Lauda lost the World Championship by a mere point to James Hunt. In 1977, he was winning again. Here in South Africa, he had his first victory since the crash, and he built on it until he'd taken the world crown for a second time. By now, Lauda had established himself as a man of almost superhuman willpower. By 1979, Lauda had had enough of Ferrari. He joined the not-so-competitive Brabham team. No one knew it then, but this non-championship race at Imola was his last victory, his last dice with a rival, his last race. 2 weeks later, he made the decision to retire.
I sometimes feel a little bit of not all that power, because especially the pros I I only finished 2 races this year. So, you know, it's all not funny anymore. So it really does get boring.
But 2 years away from motor racing seemed to have bored Niki just as much. Last September, he was having hush-hush test drives with McLaren at Donington, amid rumours that his airline business was in debt. Lauda was back.
If you want to go into motor racing and do a job like this, you have to have your heart and your head 100% for it. The money and all these other things, if you are good, they come automatically. If you are bad, they don't come. So this is not the drive. The drive is just that I like to challenge myself to see what I've lost in 2 years not driving, if I'm still able to drive quick, how the other cars go, how the other drivers drive, and just see where I stand today after 2 years being in pension.
And Niki Lauda joins us now from South Africa. Niki, now that you've had a chance to have a few runs in the car out there at Kyalami, how much of the old skill do you think you've still got?
I was very surprised to start here my first day after 2 years not driving. And my Marlboro MP4 worked so well that on the first day I think I was 4th quickest, and yesterday 6th quickest. But you have to take into consideration that there are basically now 2 types of racing cars, one with a turbo engine and one with a normal engine in, which I've got a car with a normal engine in, so the turbo cars are here going 30 kilometers quicker because they have 80 more horsepower. So the maximum I really can do is to stay ahead of the Formula Ford.
Now, of course, you're reunited with your old partner from Brabham, John Watson. How are the pair of you going to race now? Who's number 1 and who's number 2? Have you sorted that out?
Well, to be honest, I never ask who is number 1 and number 2 because I don't care what number I am. The most important thing is I get all the good bits and pieces, and that's what I'm getting.
When did the urge to come back really get at you, Niki? How long after you retired did you suddenly think to yourself, I've got to go back?
To be honest, the first year I didn't think a bit about it at all. Last year, around August, when I went to the Austrian Grand Prix, I felt the first time the racing fever coming up in myself, and then it developed so that in Monza I was anxious to get in one of these cars and try them again, which I then did in Donington. And there I felt that I'd still be able to drive, and then I sorted all the contracts out, and that's what I'm here for in Africa.
Now, you see, we keep reading here in the papers in England that it's very much a financial reason that you've come back. We keep reading stories that your airline, your private airline, is in debt and that you need money. Are these stories true?
To get in the dangerous sport as motor racing is, in because of money or some other interests, commercially, there's no way you can drive quick. Either you want to drive these racing cars, then you go quick anyway and do a good job, then the money comes. If you don't want to drive, it's better you stay at home.
What about your airline? Is that continuing in business while you're motor racing?
We're operating 4 airplanes in the moment, which we're doing since 2 years. This is going to continue as it is. Everything is running perfect, so there's no problem there whatsoever. Just people interpret in my comeback whatever they think, in their opinion, is right. But, you know, I'm back in motor racing because I like it.
What does your wife think about it, Marlene? Does she find that it's all right, or does she worry about you?
I personally think if a racing driver has a wife which says, go racing, it's good, she must be really stupid, because it's a dangerous sport, she knows. But she accepts what I'm doing. Certainly she's not happy about it, but she at least lets me do what I like, which I think is good.
How long do you think you might go on, Nicky? How long have you actually signed for?
I signed for 1 year, but I must say in the past I always signed for 1 year. I will go on in motor racing as long as I like it, and as long as the circumstances around me are in the right way I like to have it. And as it is perfect in the moment, I see myself running in motor racing for a long time.
And other things we read is that you're being paid $3 million. Is that right for 1 year's racing?
I would like to have $3 million. If you can find the guy who wrote all that, please send him to me, and then I ask him for the $3 million.
That's simply not true.
Right.
Do you think that you are going to enjoy it? You see, I mean, we all know what you went through, Nicky, and I suppose sometimes you must get terrible thoughts about that crash in '76. Do you think you can still drive and put that right out of your mind? You see, to the ordinary person, it seems impossible.
Look, I had the crash in '76 and I got world champion in '77, so if I would not have overcome all my fear and anxious things I had after the accident, I would never have made it. The reason I retired in '79, because I just had enough of driving around in circles, and because I raced for 10 years. So after having 2 years rest, I want to come back and see what I can do, but it's much easier now to come back out of the airplanes in racing again than my comeback was after the accident, because after the accident it was much more difficult to me. So I see no problem today, as long as I enjoy it and like it, to continue racing without any fear.
Now, the MP4 that you're driving, now that's one of a new generation of cars that have come along, really, since you retired. How does it compare to the cars that you were driving?
You know, the cars today, with the regulation as they are now, the suspension is very hard, so you have to get used to the way these cars are laid out in the moment. But my MP4 is laid out so that even with the funny regulation, the cars being so hard, the car still gives a smooth ride, and the most important thing for me, it's going very quick.
So would you like to give us a prediction? Where do you think you might finish on Saturday?
It's very difficult to say because the official practice will start tomorrow. If my car goes as well as it did yesterday and the day before in the unofficial practice, I hope to qualify around 7 or 8. That means hopefully to be the first normal engine car. And then in the race, I just have to stay in this position and hope that the turbos blow up.
Nicky, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And of course, everybody here wishes you the very best of luck with your comeback.
All 31 Grand Prix drivers assembled in South Africa for the start of the 1982 racing season have refused to take their cars onto the Kyalami circuit to practice or race. In reply, the governing body FISA says it will cancel the drivers' racing licenses, perhaps for good, and postpone Saturday's race. That threat has been temporarily lifted, providing the drivers turn out for practice tomorrow morning. Philip Hayton reports.
This was the Kyalami circuit near Johannesburg this morning, with everything set for the official practice laps for Saturday's Grand Prix. The cars had been assembled and tuned. The only thing missing, the drivers. 31 of them sat in a bus after walking off the track. But when they attempted to leave the circuit, they ran up against a roadblock. A minibus had been used to sabotage their escape. After a few minutes of angry exchanges, Jacques Lafitte got off the bus to remove the obstruction. He seemed to have more trouble with the minibus than with his Ligier. After making their escape, the drivers, with an escort of newsmen, headed for a Johannesburg hotel. The drivers are unhappy with clauses in what are called their super licenses, issued by FISA, the sports controlling organization. Among other things, the drivers don't want to reveal personal financial information. Former world champion Niki Lauda, who's due to make his racing comeback this year, had this to say.
Very disappointed because the only reason I'm here for is race. So let's hope it's happening soon.
You're not thinking about giving it up because of these problems?
No. Not so easy.
Organisers of the South African Grand Prix acted as go-between, travelling between the rival factions in a military helicopter, an indication perhaps of the government's concern. While officials met at the racetrack all day, former world champion James Hunt offered his solution to settle the dispute.
They're backed up against the wall. I think it's a great shame that a strike should take place. I mean, I personally think that what both sides should do right now is say, show them all the problems for the purpose of this weekend. The powers that be could waive the whole problem of super licenses, just let everybody get in their cars and drive and have a race, with an agreement to go back and meet in Europe, round a table properly, and thrash the whole thing out before the next Grand Prix, for which there's plenty of time.
South Africa is starved of much international sport, so the Grand Prix has taken on an added significance. As a cabinet minister has put it, the Grand Prix, with its 600 million television viewers worldwide...
Striking Formula One drivers in South Africa that unless they compete in the Grand Prix there on Saturday, they could face a lifetime ban. All the top drivers due to take part have said they won't compete if they're forced to sign a new super license. They say it's unfair. The license demands that drivers stay with the same team for 3 years, that they don't criticize FISA, the governing body, and that they reveal their personal financial details before they actually drive.
Today was supposed to have been the first official practice for the Grand Prix. The cars and mechanics were ready, but missing from the pits, the 36 Formula One drivers. Led by Niki Lauda, who celebrates his return to Grand Prix racing this week, they were boarding a bus at the race circuit and going nowhere near the track until they'd sorted out their differences with FISA, motor racing's governing body. So desperate were the organisers to avoid a walkout that they blocked the bus's exit from the course. It was quickly removed, and then a race of an entirely different nature began. Dozens of journalists jockeying for pole position as they hurtled after the bus heading towards Johannesburg. Watching the flying circus, a rather bemused Niki Lauda. The drivers who locked themselves into a Johannesburg hotel feel their new super license, which they have to sign before racing, damages their chances of signing new and more profitable racing contracts.
So our back's been put against the wall, so we're asking for some changes on the super licenses to make it even for the drivers as much as it is for the constructors, and I hope that we can achieve a compromise.
Meanwhile, talks between race officials and the driver's representative carried on at the circuit throughout the afternoon. The Grand Prix organiser, who stands to lose £1 million if the race is cancelled, was particularly bitter.
Well, total anxiety and anger, because here we are again with a situation, everything's gone so smoothly up until this point, and now we're in a situation which I vowed and promised never to get back into again, on, off, and, you know, it's just mind-boggling.
And at the end of the day, as the cars were wheeled away, the drivers were given a final ultimatum. Settle by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning or face a life suspension from World Championship racing. Peter Sharp, News at 10 at Kyalami Racetrack, Johannesburg.
With their licenses between the drivers and the sport's governing body. At one stage, all 31 drivers involved locked themselves away and refused to race. Well, today they changed their minds. The Grand Prix goes on as originally planned tomorrow. Practice took place today, and from Kyalami, Murray Walker now reports.
The totally expected happened because turbocharged cars are on the first 3 rows of the grid, first to 6th fastest. Niki Lauda and John Watson both went off the course in their Marlborough cars, but they're both perfectly all right and will be taking part in the race tomorrow. But in 14th position on the grid, in the turbocharged Tolman, is Englishman Derek Warwick. Well, Derek, you had an incredible experience last night in that Formula One dormitory at Johannesburg. Tell me, what exactly went on there?
Well, to be quite honest, for me, it was quite extraordinary because you've got people like Villeneuve and Peroni there, and we just sort of messed around and had a few discussions over the various decisions that had to be made. And the biggest point I'd like to make is that we all stayed together, and to a certain extent I believe we won because there is a race tomorrow.
Derek, you say you've won. The FISA people say they have made no concessions at all, and they're going to discuss it next week. But nevertheless, you believe that you have made your point.
Well, yes, I mean, we were here to make a point, and, I mean, for sure there was going to be a Grand Prix. I mean, that never ever crossed our minds. There was always going to be a Grand Prix, and there is a Grand Prix.
To go into motor racing and do a job like this, you have to have your heart and your head 100% for it. The money and all these other things, if you are good, they come automatically. If they are bad, they don't come.